Hey everybody, my name is Ken, lead pastor here at Epic. Everybody at all of our locations across the city, help me give a big warm welcome to everybody who's with us today, yeah? Love you guys, glad you're at church today. It's gonna be a great day. All right, so we're in the middle of this series called Treat Yourself. And it's a series all about self-care and personal development. And here's why. It's because how you treat yourself really matters. In fact, the idea that we've been coming back to over and over again throughout the series is this: how you treat yourself now has the potential to make later so much greater. How you treat yourself now has the potential to make later so much greater. And what we've learned over the past several weeks is that this is so true in so many different areas of life. Today, we're going to talk about one more of those. Today, we're going to talk about emotional health. Now, emotional health is interesting because I think that for most of us, we don't really know that much about it just because we don't really hear or talk very much about it very often. In fact, what I've noticed is that those who actually do know a lot about emotional health, it's for one of two reasons. Either that's the field that they work in, they do that for their job, so they know a lot about it, or two, they've got a personal story to tell about how they or someone close to them found themselves on the unhealthy side of emotional health and it almost took them out, right? So it's one of those two things. Now, one of the ways that I think emotional health is actually different than physical health is this. Whenever it comes to our health physically, like we're constantly bombarded with information about what is and isn't healthy, right? You're constantly getting information about what is or isn't healthy physically. We're constantly bombarded with information about what to do and what we should not do in order to be healthy physically, right? It's true. In fact, we all know what those things are, right? We could list them. Here's the first one: maintain a good diet. Here's the second one: exercise regularly. And here's the third one. I don't know if you catch this one or not, but practice good hygiene. This is a big deal. You know what this is. Take a shower. Brush your teeth. You know what I'm saying? Like, clean yourself. That's important. Wash your hands. Use deodorant. And I know that one's a little bit, that might be touchy for some of you, right? And I get it, the whole aluminum thing. And it's like, nope, let's do the different type of antiperspirant. Listen, as long as you're doing something, all right? It's the people that are like, no, I'm just going natural. That's the people I have a problem with. Because I don't think you're being a good neighbor if you do that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I kind of feel like you're making a decision for me and my nose if you just decide to be natural. And you should be a better neighbor than that. Jesus said, love your neighbor and use some deodorant. That's what it says in the Bible. They just maybe didn't write that part down, but I'm pretty sure it was something like that. And what's crazy is that every single one of these, each of these, there's an entire industry that's been created around them. There's an entire industry around your diet. There's an entire industry around exercise, and there's absolutely an entire industry around hygiene. Think about this, like we spend an incredible amount of our energy practicing good hygiene. And in fact, just by way of an example, I wanted to bring this morning like a little wire basket with all the different hygiene products that I use, like just me in my house. I just wanted to show you what just I use for me in a little wire basket. But then I realized that I don't have a big enough basket for all the things that I use, so I couldn't bring a basket. Instead, I had to bring my carry-on, all right? So here it is. This legit is the stuff that I use for my own personal hygiene. And we are about to get way, way more personal than I would like to get, but we're gonna do it. All right, it's worth it. So here's some things that we got. Number one, this is a big deal. I have like dentist prescribed toothpaste. So at some point in your life, you get that. So there's that. I've got lots of cotton balls going on. Mouthwash, listen, I'm a big fan of mouthwash because in my house, this right here is an aphrodisiac. This leads to good things. I'm just saying, when the mouthwash gets pulled out, it's a good day, everybody. It's like, woo! Okay, so there's that. We've got this thing right here. This is a scale. And I think sometimes it lies. I think that's a thing. I don't think it always tells the truth. So I've got a toothbrush, which is a lot of fun. This is cool. This is my move right here, right? It's Sauvage by Dior. All right, let me tell you, you combine this with this, woo, boy, let's get it on. All right. All kinds of other stuff, shampoos and a water pick. I have a water pick. People, I'm taking this stuff serious. So this right here, this is just me. Like, this is only me. I thought to myself, gosh, it'd be really fun if I brought all the hygiene products that my preteen girl uses at home. But I couldn't borrow a truck to get it all here. So I was like, well, I won't do that. So I took it a step further. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to bring all the different hygiene products that my 9-year-old son uses. All right. So I brought him. This is it. This is legit his toothbrush. I don't even think he missed it this morning. I don't even think he knows I stole his toothbrush. Right. To be 9 years old again when you had your first set of teeth and you didn't really care. You were like, these are going to be gone soon anyways. You remember that? Right? Right, but things changed when that second set came. Because you're like, I got to take care of these, right? And some of you didn't. So you had to buy a third set, I can see. That's pretty cool. And some of you are still saving up, I can tell. Too far? I'll take it too far, just being honest. So, toothless wonder. Okay, anyway, so the point is this. Aside from 9-year-old prepubescent boys, we all spend a lot of time and energy and attention and money on our physical hygiene, don't we? It's true. Because of it, it's a booming industry. And what's really neat, I think, is that over the past 100 years or so, as we've started to pay more and more attention to our physical hygiene, really great things have happened. Like, people live longer because of that, because they brush their teeth and clip their toenails. Like, people live longer. Here's another one. The rate of disease has actually declined. That's a really big deal. And it's all because of these consistent daily habits that help keep us healthy. And with that in mind, here's the question I want to pose this morning. What would happen if we started paying as much attention to our emotional health as we do to our physical health? Like, what would happen if we really started paying as much attention to our emotional health as we do to our physical health? See, what's crazy is that even though our emotional health is just as critical, just as important as our physical health, most of us are woefully ill-equipped, totally uninformed whenever it comes to emotional health in our life. Like, we know what to do to be healthy physically, but so many of us don't have a clue what to do in order to be healthy emotionally. In fact, we don't even know if we really are healthy emotionally. Like, we don't know what to measure it against. It's like, I'm a little better today than I was yesterday. Am I emotionally healthy now? Was I not emotionally healthy then? Like, how does that even work? And if we were really honest, if we were really truthful, honestly, some of us, we don't even want to know, right? Like, we don't even, it's like, I think I'm good, Like, we'd rather just kick that conversation down the street and just be like, well, we'll just get to that maybe one day We'll never do that, right? Like, we'd much rather do that than actually pick it up, look inside, and face whatever it is that's there for us. But come on, we all know what happens when you do that. Every single one of us knows what happens when you do that. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. It's kind of like having a flat tire, you know what I'm saying? Like, you drive around on a flat tire long enough, and eventually you're going to have more problems than just a flat tire. It's not going to be long before you're going to have more problems than just a flat tire. In fact, the later you wait to deal with your stuff, the greater the cost of not doing so. The later we wait to deal with our stuff, the greater the cost of not doing so. And that's the reason why it's so important that we talk about this morning, because you don't have to wait for it to cost you a marriage or cost you a reputation or cost you something important in your future for you to actually be willing to do something about that now. But sadly, that's, for a lot of us that have been around for a while, that's part of our story. Like, we waited so long that eventually the cost was so great, right? We wait till the cost is too great. And I really believe that God wants something more for you than that. I believe that God wants something better for you than that. That you don't have to wait and get it wrong before you eventually get it right. No, I think that with God's help, I think we can actually get it right long before we ever would have gotten it wrong. Hey, this morning what I want to do is I want to talk with you about one aspect in particular of emotional health. There's a lot of different aspects we could talk about as it relates to emotional health. But I want to talk with you about one in particular, and it actually comes from the wisest man who ever lived other than Jesus. His name is King Solomon. And I want to show you what Solomon had to say about emotional health. Now, he's the wisest man who ever lived other than Jesus, so you kind of, when this guy says something, you kind of got to listen. Kind of a big deal. All right, so here it is, Proverbs chapter 4, starting in verse 23. Here's what he says. He says, above all else, guard your heart. Like above all else, guard your heart. Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived other than Jesus, says, hey, look, if you don't get anything else from me, get this. Hey, if you're going to write down anything that I have to say, make sure you write this down. The most important thing that you can do for you is guard your heart. The most important thing that you can do for you is guard your heart. It's like, okay, what does that mean? You know what I'm saying? It's like, what does that even mean? What's it mean to guard your heart? Here's what I think. I think that Solomon, in all of his wisdom, I think what he was saying was something like this. Listen. He's saying, hey, as you make your way through life, there are going to be times when you bump up against some things that have the potential to discourage, distract, and deceive you from what God says is true about you. And when that happens, it's your job to keep those things from finding a home in your heart. Guard your heart. I think that's what Solomon is trying to say to us. Did you get it? It's probably the most important thing I'll say in this whole talk. And so I'll say it one more time. Here it is. I think that Solomon would look you in the face and look me in the face, and I think he'd say, hey, as you make your way through life, there are going to be moments where you bump up against some things that have the potential to discourage, distract, and deceive you from what God says is true about you. And in that moment, it's your job to keep those things from finding a home in your heart. Because trust me, they're going to try. They're going to try to work their way in there. And in that moment, you got to remember that the most important thing that you can do for you is guard your heart and keep that from happening. And don't miss this. Did you see whose job it is? Whose job is it? Is it my job as the pastor? Nope. Is it your parents' job? Is that whose job it is? No. Is it your spouse's job? No. Is it Bay's job? Is it Bay's job? No. Is it your neighbor's job? Is it your girlfriend's job? Is it Steve Jobs' job? No. Nobody's job. No, it's your job. That wasn't funny, was it? Sometimes. It's your job. And what's interesting is he goes on, and he goes on to tell us why this is so important for all of us. Here's what he says. He says, hey, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Everything you do flows from it. Listen, everything you do comes from your heart. You love from your heart. You live from your heart. You lead from your heart. You react and respond from your heart. You persevere from your heart, but you also give up from your heart. Everything you do in this life comes from your heart. And I'm telling you, there's so much truth to that. There's so much truth in that. See, your heart is where your emotions live. Your heart is where your thoughts originate. Your heart is where every action is born. And so here's the thing. Every action you do comes from whatever you've let your heart think is true. Every single action you do, it comes from whatever it is you let your heart think is true. So Solomon says to you, and he says to me, that the most important thing that you and I can do for ourselves is to guard our hearts and don't let the lies live in there. Listen, your heart, it directs your life like a sail directs a ship or a boat. Here's the thing about that. Like, you might not be able to control the wind, but you can control your sail. You get what I'm saying here? Like, in so many ways, your heart is like the sail of a boat. But you and I have the power to choose whether or not our life will be filled up and guided by the winds of God's truth, or if we'll allow our life to be pushed around by lies. Like, we have that choice. We can decide what it is that fills our sail and moves us around and navigates us through life. That's our choice. A few weeks ago now actually, I shared with you about my struggle with weight and how I've always thought that was a fight that I just couldn't win. And for most of my life, I've believed that lie. But now I've been putting in work, people. I've been doing the stuff to replace that lie with the winds of truth. And things are different as a result. You see, lies lead to bondage. Lies lead to defeat. But truth will set you free. It's truth that sets you free. And so in a lot of ways, one of our primary jobs is to make sure that we inform our heart of what's true and don't forget it. Like, I don't care how many times you got to tell yourself what's true. You tell yourself again, and you don't forget it. So what about you? What are the lies that you've let in your heart that have pushed you around? And as a follow-up question, what's the truth that you need to replace it with? Like, what are the lies that you've let into your heart that have pushed you around for too long? And what's the truth that you need to replace those lies with? Listen, this right here, being willing to roll up your sleeves and do the hard and necessary work of considering your past and searching your heart for answers to questions like these, I think that's the beginning of real emotional health. Doing the work to actually identify the lies and then replace them with truth, oh man, that's the beginning of something really special. And for example, if something happened in your past that led you to believe that you're not enough, you're never good enough, you're not smart enough, you'll never be enough, if you believe that lie about yourself, here's what I know is true. You'll spend your life trying to prove that you are enough, or you'll live your life in defeat because you realize that you aren't. You live your life with that lie as true, that's what'll happen. You'll drive yourself ragged trying to prove that you're enough to somebody. Or you'll just give up altogether because you're so defeated. But if you'll take that lie and you'll replace it with the truth of what God says about you, that you are in fact fearfully and wonderfully made. God created you. He knew you when you were in your mother's womb. That not only did he make you and create you, but the scripture says that you are his masterpiece. Masterpiece. Huh. Stand a little taller when you think about that. That not only are you his masterpiece, but he created you new through Jesus. And that when he created you, he did so with good things for you to do. He had plans for your life. Like the creator of the universe stopped one day and said, what are my plans for that person's life? He's got plans for your life. You replace the lie that you're not enough with the truth that you're God's masterpiece, you'll live the rest of your days completely different than you would have otherwise. Do you see how not believing the lies and holding on to truth impacts and influences everything about you? You see how incredible that could be? Listen, I think that that's part of what it takes to be healthy emotionally. That you have to be willing to pick up the rock and look under it, even if it's kind of like, ugh, at first. You know what I'm saying? You have to be willing to just look under there and say, all right, I'm just gonna do this. And gang, that's part of my goal. Listen, there's just no way possible that we could adequately cover all the different aspects of emotional health in 35 minutes. Impossible. Couldn't do it. But you know what I can do? I can challenge you, and I can encourage you to take your emotional health more seriously because it affects everything else about you. Some of you at this point, or maybe earlier in the talk so far, you had a moment where you're like, no. Like you're already kind of pushing the brakes a little bit and you're like, not for me. I think I'm emotionally healthy enough. I'm good. I'm fine. I will not take seconds for that. We're good. We're good. The truth is, you could be in a place where honestly, you probably still need to do some work. And so here's what I did. I came up with a list of some stuff, some different scenarios that you may or may not identify with. And here's all I'm saying. You gotta hear me. There's no judgment. There's no condemnation. I'm not trying to put anybody down, make anybody feel bad at all. I'm the last one to want to do that. You think you got junk? Join the club. But I came up with a bunch of different scenarios, and I just want to read through them. And here's the thing. If you identify with any of them, here's one thing I think that could be a possibility. It might be an indicator that you still have some work to do as it relates to your emotional health, right? So here we go. Some of you, you're like me. There's some area of your life where you just have not been able to get out of your own way. You know what I'm talking about? Anybody like that? Man, if I were you, if that described me, which it does, I would wonder to myself, what's the lie that's keeping me from truth? Like, what's the lie? What's going on in here that's keeping me from truth? What is that? Others of you, you're just really angry. Like, you're mad all the time, and it's on your face. Like, you walk around, your face is mad. It's like, what? And you don't think you're mad, but you are, and everybody knows you are. It's like, You're just angry. You've got a really short fuse. Like, it doesn't take much to set you off at all. And my guess is that you probably don't want to be that way. But you can't help it. Something just sets you off. And you find yourself giving a $10 response to a 50-cent problem all the time. You know what I'm talking about? You ever met those people? And it's like, really? Like, you that mad about that? Like, that is not that big of a deal. Some of you have a really hard time treating other people well. You just have a hard time finding compassion, have a hard time finding kindness for others. It's just hard for you. That's an indicator that maybe. For others of you, man, you don't even like who you are, and so you kind of feel like you just got to walk around and wear a mask and pretend to be someone else. That's the only way you can make it through. Others of you, you have a really hard time being grateful because you're so focused on everything you don't have. Some of you, what you value most is wealth and popularity and being attractive, so much more than the other things in your life that actually really matter. Some of you are just depressed. Like, you rarely, if ever, laugh or smile, and life just feels heavy for you. Some of you are so anxious. Like, you can't ever really fully unwind. You just kind of live life unsettled. Some of you are addicted, whether that be to alcohol or prescription drugs or to likes on your social media page. Like, you're addicted, and you can't imagine going any real length of time without having that kind of a thing going on in your life, right? Some of you are so fragile that even the slightest bit of criticism that comes your way sends you into a tailspin. Others of you are just insecure. Like, you're so desperate for someone, anyone, to say to you that you're valuable, that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get that validation. Even step past some of your morals. Some of you are just bitter. Just bitter. And you don't want to be. But someone hurts you. The truth is that you have every right to feel every way that you feel. And you have every right to be as upset as you are. But what they did to you so long ago, you're still carrying with you today. Some of you are in relationships now, and you're making the person that you're in a relationship with now pay for what your ex did. And they didn't have anything to do with it. And they're just like, what? Why are you mad? Some of you, you're just spent. And you're on the verge of a breakdown. Like you've been running so hard and so fast for so long that you've got nothing left. I've been there. I lived that one. I'll never forget, it's probably about 6-7 years ago now. It was at the end of our last Christmas Eve service. And I walked off the stage and I remember having this thought. I thought to myself, man, I bet this is what it feels like to run a marathon. Like I feel like I just ran a marathon. Now, I've never run a marathon in my life. Surprise, surprise. Some of you are like, I know. But I thought to myself, I bet this is what people feel like who run a marathon. I was just spent. And it wasn't long after that, I was sitting in my living room. Tiffany was sitting on the couch beside me. The kids were playing. We were watching TV. And Tiff looks over and she says to me, she says, Kent, are you about to cry? I was like, yeah. She said, why? I said, I have no idea. Like I was totally emotional for no reason at all. There weren't even cute little puppies on the screen, nothing. But I was totally overwhelmed, totally overcome with emotion. And so what I did is I went and I met with some friends and I was like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm like emotional for no reason. You just say boo to me and I'm just like, ooh. And as we began to kind of dig around and search and look at some things, we realized that there was way more to the story than even what I realized. You see, what was going on at that moment was that someone close to me who wasn't on our staff yet, but was one of our volunteers at one of our churches, they'd been in a terrible accident and lost their leg. And I felt responsible to help come alongside their family and kind of help navigate through that. Someone else really close to me, a couple that was close to me, their marriage fell apart, they got divorced. Just a hard time. I was physically, emotionally spent. I was just done. It was a mess. You know what I learned? I learned that even when we think we got it all together, sometimes we don't. And listen, if you find yourself in that list that I just shared, here's what I want you to know. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. It's okay not to be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. Man, I just want to encourage you. I just want to challenge you to be willing to do some reflection. I just want to encourage you and challenge you to take some time to do some real self-care, to see if there's anything going on in here that needs to be addressed. You know what I'm saying? And one of the best examples of this that we find in Scripture is actually King David. I love King David. This guy, if you read through the Psalms, he wrote a bunch of them. He just poured his heart out. And he was so introspective and he was so emotionally aware. Like he knew what was up. I mean, when he was mad, like he told God, he told everybody, he's like, look, I'm mad. And I was like, ooh, he's just telling everybody. But he was just kind of aware of what was going on. And that was a really important part of his spirituality. Look what he says over in Psalm 4, verse 4. Here's what David said. He says, hey, when you're on your bed, when you go to bed at night, search your heart and be silent. Did you get that? He said, hey, when you go to bed at night, here's something that I think you should do. Take some time. Just stop and search your heart and be silent. Why? So you know what's going on in here. So you take a moment to evaluate how you're really doing. Like, where are you really as it relates to your emotional health? Are you good? Or are you just pressing through? Are you really good? David says, hey, you should make this a habit of your life, where every night when your head hits the pillow at night, you just take a moment, stop, evaluate how things are really going. And then Psalm 139, verse 23 and 24, he takes it a step further. He says this, he says, search me, God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there be any offensive way in me and lead me in the way everlasting. David says, hey, not only am I going to take a moment every single day and just kind of evaluate how am I doing, but God, I need your help. God, would you help me do that? Would you look at my heart? Would you look at the things that are banging around in here? Would you help me get rid of all the things that don't need to be in there? And would you help me to hold on securely to the things that should and do need to be there? Would you help me do that? Would you search my heart? Will you help me with that? I've had two kind of moments in my life where I felt like emotionally things were not so healthy. And some of the things I've learned from that and walking through that season has been, hey, Sometimes, even though you think you're okay, you're not okay. It's important to really do some self-reflection. Some other things I've learned is that, hey, sleep and rest and eating well and just pausing can go a long way. Hey, if you find yourself having anxiety attacks all the time, that's a thing, right? Because after you have anxiety attacks all the time, eventually you're going to have an emotional breakdown. And after you have an emotional breakdown, eventually you'll have a nervous breakdown, and you don't want to get there. And so we got to be in tune with what's going on with ourselves. So here's what I think are just a few tips, some things that will help us practice good emotional self-care. One, practice the art of being emotionally aware. And here's how you can do that. You got to take a moment and ask yourself, why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? And the first question, what am I feeling? Like, what is this? Am I just pissed? Why? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? Be more emotionally aware. Here's another one. Ask the people that are close to you. You want to know how you're doing health-wise, emotionally? You ask someone who really knows you. And I'm not talking about your fight friend that just lies to you about stuff. I'm talking about someone who cares enough about you to confront you, who's willing to say the hard thing because they really care about you. For those of you that are married, oftentimes that's your spouse. I know that is for me. My wife Tiffany and I, yesterday, we celebrated 17 years being married. 17 years! Woo! Now, we just had a baby this past year, and Tiffany said the most depressing thing to me ever. She looked at me and she goes, just imagine 17 more years and we'll be empty nesters. I was like, we did not plan this well at all. Man. Whew. He's lucky we love him. But Tiffany, she doesn't pull any punches. You know what she does? Sometimes she'll come up to me if I'm in a mood, and she'll just walk right up to me and she'll be like, look, you need to go to sleep. That's all she'll say. She don't say anything. She just goes, you need to go to sleep. I know exactly what that means. That's what it means. But listen, if you don't have, a Tiffany, then you need a friend that loves you enough to say the hard things sometimes, right? Because listen, it takes a we to see what me can't see. You got to have some people in your life who can see the things that you can't see and who care enough about you to actually say something. And then here's the third one. I think sometimes you need to go see a licensed counselor. And this isn't like, if things are all falling apart. Hey, you know one of the most important preventative things you could ever do to make sure you live a life that's emotionally healthy? Go see a licensed counselor. And let me emphasize licensed, okay? This isn't your cousin Pookie, right? Or that one person from down the street or your coworker is like, I think they're smart. They ain't. They're not smart. Right? Go meet with somebody. And here's the value of having a counselor. Here's the value of having a therapist that you really talk to. And find a good one, because some of them suck. I'm going to be honest. They just do. Right? And if it don't work out, just move on to the next one. But find a good one. And here's the value of having a counselor. They help you discover your thinking behind your actions. They help you discover why it is you did the things that you're doing. And that's an important thing to know. You know what I'm saying? One of the things that I do with my kids every once in a while is I'll pull them close. I'll get them alone, just me and my daughter or me and my son. I'll pull them close and I'll just ask them this question. I'll take my hand, I'll put it on their heart, and I'll just say, son, how's everything in your heart right now? Is everything okay? Everything good? And there's just something about asking that question that way that if there's anything rattling around in there, it just... One time I put my hand on his heart, I was like, son, are you good? Everything okay in your heart? And he was like, no. And we had a talk, and it was good. And so let me ask you, everything going okay in there? Anything rattling around in there that shouldn't be? Any lies you've been telling yourself? Any stuff you need to, anything going on? I'm telling you. If there is, it's not that you're bad. You're normal. It's okay not to be okay. It's just not okay to stay that way. You know what I'm saying? What's funny, we might push back to some of this today and be like, It's emotional mumbo jumbo. I don't know about that. Maybe you find yourself pushing the brakes a little. Maybe you're like, this isn't for me. I don't like this. It involves change and like effort and too much thinking, and I would rather watch Netflix. You know what I'm saying? Here's the thing. You have no idea what hangs in the balance of your decision to live an emotionally healthy life. You have no idea. Your relationships, your future. You have no idea what hangs in the balance of your decision to live an emotionally healthy life. You know, aside from Scripture, I think one of the greatest places to pick up little nuggets of wisdom are bumper stickers. You know what I'm saying? And there's something about a good bumper sticker that you're just like, nailed it. Well, there's this one bumper sticker out there. It says this. Here's what it says. It says, there's only two things I don't like: change and the way things are. I read that, it made me chuckle. I was like, isn't that so true? Doesn't that describe so many of us? Like, we don't like the way things are, but we don't want to have to change anything either. It's like, ugh. And here's what happens when we find ourselves in that place. If we're not careful, we just kind of resolve to just live with things like they are. It just is what it is. And if we're not careful, you and I, we can be content with our discontent. Come on. Like, how miserable of a life is that, to just walk through life content with being discontent? You know, just the fact that you're here today, just the fact that you're at one of our locations this morning, just the fact that you're listening online right now, you know, it tells me something about you. I think it helps me assume that there's at least some desire on the inside of you for change. That there's at least something in you that isn't content to just be discontent. And here's the thing. God can do something with that. He really can. I think that's why the psalmist prayed, God, create in me a clean heart and renew a right spirit. Because that's the kind of work that only God can really do. And isn't it good to know there's a God who knows your name and has good plans for you and wants to help you guard your heart so that you can live your life with truth filling your sail and guiding your steps instead of lies pushing you around. That's a good thing to know. Yeah? Yeah. Let me pray for you. God, thank you for every person here. Lord, I pray you give us the wisdom to know what to do with what we've heard and the courage to do it. I pray that every single one of us would leave this talk, leave this message challenged and encouraged. In Jesus' name, amen.